All right, we're back in the shop this morning. Hope you can hear me okay. It's a little cold in the shop. Got the heater running, so there's a little fan that makes some noise. Today we're going to try to get some truss rods routed for these two necks that I have, and they're quickly becoming different necks. I'm sure you can see at this point, this one is way shorter than this one. This one's going to be more of kind of a fender style neck, and it's going to hopefully get glued into that redwood body, but it's not going to have a super long tenon. It will probably end up at just over 3 inches with the heel glued into the body. This other one I left long, and going into this kind of explorer-ish inspired body, and I'm hoping to keep a long tenon that's going to go underneath the humbucker pickup, the first one. And so that creates kind of two different styles for routing the truss rod. And I'm using the spoke wheel truss rods now, and I got these from Bitterroot Guitars. They really make some good quality stuff, and the nice thing about these is they really don't get a whole lot fatter here at the end until right where the nut is. And I've got a little jig that I built to help route for the spoke wheel in the end of the heel end of a neck, and I'll show you that once we hopefully get all set up and everything. And then this other one, for the truss rod, we're going to have to start and then stop and then either chisel out or route out for the spoke wheel, because it's right in the middle of this neck tenon down here at the end, and I'll show you how we kind of do that. I've got the 2 fretboard blanks laser cut out for the inlays, and the glue is just some blue tape on the back. When I go to do the epoxy resin inlay, that just keeps it from going through the other side. I've done a few test pieces so far, and I like where I'm headed. I think I've got kind of an idea going forward where I can get a nice kind of mother of pearl look with some color, kind of blues and greens. The only thing I did, these are already slotted, and I've taped over. It's hard to tell because I've got brown binding tape covering the slots. You don't want to get any resin in your fret slots because you have to cut them again. And the only other thing I did was with a little small brush, just kind of went around the inside and right around the edges of the laser cut with some sealer shellac, and that just helps. This is a roasted maple fretboard, and typically it shouldn't bleed any color or anything, but if it were to want to bleed into the wood with the epoxy resin, that just keeps it from bleeding, so you get a nice, really clean, sharp edge on the epoxy inlay. And I think that's about it for now. These 2 fretboards will be a little bit different. On my prototype neck here, you can see the spoke wheel is right at the end of the fretboard, without an overhang or anything. And for the Explorer type shape, even though this will have a longer tenon, the fretboard will come to an end like that, just because the pickup, the humbucker, is going to get mounted right at the end of that. For the telly style body, I'll probably create kind of a decorative overhang, and the spoke wheel will be, the access will be cut into that with a little bit of an overhang. I'll show you how we get to that eventually. That probably won't be today. That's, basically when we're getting ready to mount this up to the fretboard. And I'll head over and I'll show you what we're gonna do on the router table. All right, we're over here at the router table set up now. I know it looks a little weird because this is kind of a dual purpose router table. The top flips down once you get the router bits and everything out of the way, and it's dual purpose as a workbench also. I've got just a temporary fence set up on the router table. This is some aluminum angle iron, and it's just clamped to the table. I've got one on each end, and then I've got a little block here to keep it from moving as you're routing, and it's bolted or clamped to the edge of the workbench there. So we're gonna have to do some drop cuts on especially that longer. This one I can route from where the end of the truss rod goes all the way out the end of the neck, because it's going to be a fender style neck. But the other one, we're going to have to start in the middle and stop in the middle. And what I've done is, after I got this all set up and got center marked here for the neck blank, put some tape down, take your square, run it on the front side of the blade of the router bit, and make sure that your router blades are perpendicular to where you're getting the furthest point that it's going to cut, and then draw a line, and then come over to the other side and do the same thing. And so that's the front side and the back side of how far your router bit is going to cut. So you can, let me get the other neck. On this particular neck, you can see I've drawn some lines. This is where the truss rod will start in the neck. This is the nut line, and this is where the headstock break angle starts. And then at the other end, this is where the truss rod spoke wheel is going to end. So you can line up that first line, which is the front edge of the router bit, drop it down on the router bit and route until you get to the back line, and that's your stopping point, and that'll give you the full length of where the truss rod is in the channel. And we're going to take several passes at this. You never want to route the entire channel all at once. So a couple millimeters, and then raise it up a couple millimeters. And these truss rods are about 9 millimeters depth for the entire route, and then a little wider and a little deeper at the end, and I'll show you how we do that with the next size router bit. And there's the initial pass. Right in the center where we want it. Starts right at the line, ends right at the line. Take a little chisel, square that off, we'll be good to go. I'll take another couple passes and I'll show you at the end where we're at. Alright. Yep, that's sitting just below the surface, just like we like it. All I gotta do is widen out this part and for the spoke wheel, and we'll be good to go. Another little trick to setting the depth to route out for the truss rod cavity, this little depth stop, set it to 0. Put it over the very top of the router bit. You can see we're at 5.62. So I can come up here. That's 9.07. That should give me just a little below. And that's how we set it up. Just below the surface, just the way we like it. I'll change over to a 3/8 inch bit. We'll just knock this part out, and then I'll try to show you the jig for doing the spoke wheel at the end. All right, so for the nut for the spoke wheel, a little wider. This is 3/8 here. We'll change over to the 3/8 inch bit. So I'm just going to mark right here how deep I want, or how far in I want that to go, and I'll transfer that mark to the end of the neck, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll just plunge it in, lift it up right at the end of that, and then I'll show you how we do the spoke wheel. Okay, this is the routing jig for the truss rod wheel. Right now, I just have it with super glue and masking tape. I get it lined up where I want it, how deep. Draw a line on this edge, and then double stick tape or super glue masking tape this onto the back of there. And then you get the neck centered on that, clamp it, and you just run a flush trim bit sticking up just a little bit, and it rides on the inside of that. The radius of this is just perfect for the spoke wheel to fit into. So that'll impart that little radius on the heel end of the neck. And again, we take little bites. We take a little bit more, and it goes pretty quick. And before you know it, we'll have the spoke wheel recessed right into the heel of the guitar neck. Got the neck blank all clamped up in the jig. You can see this is the end of the neck. Lining it up was pretty easy because these sapele stripes going through are just on either side of where we want that spoke wheel to go. And we've got the pattern bit with the bearing on the router set up. The height is set to take about 3 millimeters off for the first pass, and then we'll go about another 3 millimeters. That'll be our 1/4 inch. That's how deep we want, maybe within a millimeter or so of the truss, the spoke wheel to go in there. And I'll take the first cut and we'll show you how to do that. That's our first cut. You can see it's just about 2 millimeters deep. We just need to come up a few more, and we'll have that cut in there in no time. So there we have our truss rod slot all done, truss rod inserted, spoke wheel recessed into the heel, and you can see it's even a little on the inside of where the flush cut for the heel will go, so I can even wait till after the fretboard's mounted if I wanted to, and route for the shape of the neck, and I wouldn't hit the truss rod because it's recessed in just enough. All right, so we've still got a little bit of work to do on this other neck that has the long tenon. Still got to make just the nut part there a little bit wider where the spoke wheel nut goes, and then also for the spoke wheel itself, I've got it marked out in pencil. I've got a little 1/8 inch bit in my little Stumac Dremel plunge router, and I'll just freehand that very carefully. And I've got the depth set for the depth of the truss rod plus the nut for the initial pass, and then I'll have to extend it down just a little bit deeper to go for the actual spoke wheel. And I'll do most of that off camera, and then we'll take a look at it. All right, we've taken a few passes, taken just a little off at each pass. Kind of hog that little area out. And let me grab the truss rod. Drops right in there. Sits just below the surface, just the way we like it. Plenty of room for the spoke wheel to move. All right, now that I have the truss rod channels routed out on the router table, we've got the router bits put away. Thought I'd show you how my router table dual purpose bench works. It's got hinges on the back side, so I can flip that up for the router table underneath. My my router lift is kind of a do-it-yourself cheapy lift idea, but works really well. When router into the router table works really well. Very powerful motor. I've got all the tools to remove bits from the router right here. Also on the sides, I've got clamp storage. On the other side is the cheapy Harbor Freight clamp storage. It's on wheels, which a lot of times you'll see me start routing and the whole thing moves. I have to kind of pause and lock the wheels down. Kind of forget that sometimes, but when you've got a small shop operation, everything needs to be kind of dual purpose.